All right, so I'm back with another video for you on fears and doubts that kept me nearly from writing my memoir. Okay. Again, I'm Allie. I'm the lady boss owner of The Right Place, Right Time, which is my virtual boutique of professional writing services for badass women ready to brave the past the page and change the effing world with their stories. So today we're talking about one of my number two fears when it came to writing my memoir, and that was anonymity and whether to write under a pen name. So let's be real. Writing memoir is a tricky business. It's tricky because you're likely writing about people who are one, still alive, two, going to read your work, three, might have a different perspective on what it is that you are sharing, and four, generally might be pissed off by what you have to say. It depends on the story you're telling, of course, and the circumstances, and also the way that you phrase things and the way that you mention them. But there can be a lot of risk involved for people when it comes to telling their truth and having that truth relate to others. And of course, we don't live in isolation, right? So the stories that we tell are always going to include other people. Now, for me, I was like, well, I've got a couple of options. I could write under a pen name as one example. I could write under a pen name so I could maybe feel more free to write the whole story and say whatever I want to say and however I want to say it without pissing people off. But the reality was that even if I wrote under a pen name, somewhere along the way, somebody was going to know that it was me. And that word was going to spread. And so what good would the pen name be if it was not kept locked down to myself? Well, if I was going to keep the pen name locked down to myself, but my dream has been to be a writer, then what am I gaining by not being able to acknowledge that I've written something? So the pen name, there was a lot of holes, right, in going after the pen name, at least for me, right? But it was an option. So I really was like, okay, what do I want to do here? Do I write under a pen name? Do I not tell this story until all the people who might be in it are dead? Do I skip over those stories altogether and never tell them, right? Can I do that though and still tell the story that I want to tell? So none of these avenues were really all that helpful. These avenues were not going to get me what I ultimately wanted, which was to be honest, be authentic, be genuine, and be me, right? Which is consequently the very point of my very first memoir, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, Letters on the Art and Journey of Being Brave and Being Me, right? So there was no way for me to feel authentic and genuine in telling my story while using a pen name, skipping details, avoiding certain narratives, etc. But it didn't stop me from being terrified of judgment and criticism and the possibility that people would be pissed off or they would disagree or they wouldn't want to hear what I had to say about something that maybe they were involved with. So how did I get over this? How did I figure this out? Well, number one, it came down to which did I fear more? Did I fear being honest and truthful and authentic more than not writing under my own name? And when it came down to it, I was more fearful of not being true to myself, of not writing under my own name, of using some other alias than I was the fear of other people. So that made my decision ultimately. So then it was a matter of, okay, I've made the decision that I'm going to write under my own name. Now, before I go actually to this next point, what I do want to say is that if you're somebody who's like, absolutely no way, I'm writing under a pen name, that is absolutely your choice. And there are plenty of amazing, amazing, amazing reasons to do that and to go for it. And if that's what serves you, then I would totally support that. I'm not putting any judgment or criticism on people who decide to use a pen name. I am strictly saying that that was not the way that I wanted to go. Okay, so that note there and included. Let's talk then about how did I go about writing about these people honestly while not using a pen name and using my real name. So a couple of things that I did. One, I chose to change everybody's names and provide them a different name for the book. That was the first thing. The second thing was that I put a disclaimer at the front of the book that said that I had done that I was not going to use the specific names of the people in the book or institutions or towns or cities or anything like that. That way there was no specific demographic or contacting information that was connected with the people that I told in the story. Obviously, the people who really know me knew who some of these characters were, or they had really good guesses. My goal, however, was to not make it so explicitly obvious that my closest inner circle and the people who knew me would automatically be able to see cousin Billy or best friend Sam or whoever inside the pages, right? They can make their best guesses, but there was no hard line that was connecting one to another, right? Part of that also had to do with legal ramifications. When you all of a sudden start to name that specific person and give every single detail about them in the book, and then also put them in a situation, a scene in your book, or circumstances in your book that don't speak very kindly of them, shed them in not so good light, you don't want to wobble along the line of defamation and basically being liable for defaming them, right? So part of it was not just changing the name and the disclaimer, but it was also picking and choosing the details I shared about the people in the book, right? I didn't want to give away that they had a birthmark on their left arm or a tattoo that looked specifically like this, or they grew up on that street, or, they once had, this particular car with license plate X in this year. I mean, a lot of those details wouldn't have been even that important to the story anyway, so why include them? But the point that I'm making here is to pick and choose what you say about the people in the book. Pick one or two characteristics that are authentic to them, but without having to illustrate them so finely that people know automatically who they are. Another suggestion would be to talk to the people that you're writing about and let them know that you're writing about them, that this is what you're doing to set up their protection of or privacy of who they are. Let them know what it is that you plan to talk about, and if you're really comfortable with them, let them actually read the part of the manuscript where they appear. This can be really scary for people. This is like a big deal, but I would say don't publish anything that you are going to be uncomfortable with everybody knowing when it gets to the other side, because there's no reversing it at that point. So if you're not comfortable sharing it with the person who's in it, yet you're going to take it right over to press, then you're not going to be any more comfortable when that book hits the shelf than you would be now, right? Let them see it in the draft state so they know what's coming. You know that you're comfortable with what you're saying about these other people that you care about, right? And that you're not dealing with that hurdle when you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, my book just went to market and now everybody is reading my story. And so I don't just have to worry now about the criticism of the people who are in it, but I have to worry about the judgment and the criticism and the feedback of the general readers that I'm now apparently reaching and serving that I didn't think about before. All right. So be comfortable in what it is that you have to say. The other thing that I would say is that think about the details that serve the story, the details that need to be in there, the stories that serve the larger thread and arc of what you're trying to say, and anything that doesn't serve, leave out. So just because maybe you had one volatile moment with this character, or maybe you had one really sad moment with this character, or maybe you had one meaningful moment with this character, if these people or these moments, these incidents don't actually serve the greater arc of your story, then even though they might have been powerful in real life, it doesn't mean that they get included in the actual book, right? So there's some filtering that needs to happen. You get to choose what makes it into the final manuscript. So when you're thinking about writing your truth and you're thinking about how that involves other people, right, that you know, that you love, that you care about, that you respect, you don't have to put everything in. It's not, your memoir isn't like dumping your entire life story into the pages. It's picking a part of your life story that's valuable, relevant, memorable, and universal to the reader, and telling that story, and only telling the memories or experiences or thoughts that relate to that particular story. It's not a biography, or autobiography, I should say. It's not, I was born on a sunny day in 1973, right? And then every moment after that. It's a narrowed, focused look. Okay, so when you're thinking about the people and the stories that are being involved, you might not need everybody. You might not need every single thing. You just need the ones that make the story count. Lastly, what I want to end with is saying that fear is always going to be there. If it's not fear about using your real name versus using a pen name, there might be fear about getting it perfect. There might be fear about getting the memory right. It might be fear about the money it's going to take to write the book. It might be fear about what people are going to think of it after it's hit the shelf. Fear is not going to go away during the writing process or during the book development, various stages. Fear will always be there. It's going to be riding side saddle, okay? Same horse, same journey. It's going to be right there. So what I'm going to say is that fear needs to just be acknowledged and accepted, but it doesn't get to drive the bus. I think Elizabeth Gilbert says it best in her book Big Magic, which is that fear gets to ride in the back seat of the car, but they don't get to ever steer the car or change the radio station. So let fear be there, let them tag along because you're not going to get rid of them anyway, but keep going. And remember, always remember that whatever choice you make about your book, the choices are yours. Your book, your story. You get to make the decisions that best serve you in the process in the book at large. If you need support, please reach out. You can head over to therightplacerightTime.com. That's WRITE in the first instance, RIGHT in the second. And be in touch. You can contact me or you can check out the packages that I offer. I have a free 30-minute coffee and craft call. Oh my gosh, I stumbled through that. Where we can just chat and we can talk about what's going on. All right. I also have 90-minute story starter sessions, which are basically individual consults where we get to talk about all the things that are kind of plaguing you when it comes to telling your story and writing your book. So stay tuned for more on this channel.